Samson was the man chosen by God. He single-handedly defeated entire armies, but in the end, he fell into the hands of a simple, beautiful, and seductive woman. While he slept in her lap, she cut his braids, the secret of his strength, and handed Samson over to his mortal enemies. In ancient times, when Israel was still searching for its strength and identity, a shadow loomed over the land. The Philistines, relentless enemies, spread terror and oppression throughout the territory. They plundered villages, destroyed crops, and laughed at the Israelites' despair. Each day was a battle for survival, and God's people cried out for a kafesh, deliverer. It was in this setting that Samson's story began, but not in a grand way, nor on a battlefield. The first scene of this story unfolds in the silence of a humble home where a woman lived in deep sadness. She and her husband Manoah had no children. Sterility was seen as a curse, and hope seemed to have abandoned that household until one day something extraordinary happened. While she tended to her daily tasks, a figure of light appeared before her, an angel with eyes that seemed to see beyond time, brought a message that would change everything.
You have never been able to have children, but now you will conceive. And the child you bear will not be like the others. He will be a Nazirite, consecrated to God from the womb. Through him, Israel will begin to be delivered from the hands of the Philistines.
The woman's heart pounded. She ran to tell her husband, who, incredulous, prayed for that messenger to return. And so it happened. The angel appeared again, and before Manoah repeated the promise, the child would be born. But there was one condition: his hair could never be cut. Samson was born under the weight of that promise. From a young age, he knew he was different. While other children ran freely, he bore the burden of being the chosen one. As he grew, the difference became more evident. His body was strong, stronger than any man in the village. He hunted lions. With his bare hands, tore apart beasts as if they were paper. And over time, his legend began to spread. But Samson's strength was not only physical, it was spiritual, a force that came from God. Each strand of his hair represented that connection. As long as his braids remained intact, he would be invincible, and the Philistines, oh, how the Philistines feared him. In one of the most famous episodes, Samson faced 1,000 Philistines with nothing but the jawbone of a donkey. 1,000. Men fell before him as he moved like an unstoppable storm. But even the strongest man has his weaknesses, and Samson's weakness was not on the battlefield, but in his heart. It was then that Delilah appeared. The Bible does not reveal much about Delilah, her past, her motivations, or who she truly was, but that only adds to the mystery. What we do know is that she was beautiful, seductive, and dangerous. Samson fell for her almost instantly, and Delilah, with her enigmatic smile, knew how to take advantage of every second of that passion. The heart of Samson, which did not yield before 1,000 warriors, yielded to a woman. The Philistine leaders noticed. They knew Samson's strength could not be broken by swords, but perhaps it could be destroyed by Delilah's charm. They approached her with a proposal.
Discover the secret of Samson's strength, and each of us will give you 1,000 pieces of silver.
Delilah accepted, but she wasn't direct. She knew Samson would be suspicious. Instead, she waited, and on a quiet night, while Samson rested, Delilah, with a sweet voice, asked,
"Samson, you are so strong, but is there anything that can make you weak?"
Samson smiled. He knew he was being tested.
"If I am tied with 7 fresh bowstrings, I will be as weak as any other man."
That night, Delilah carried out the plan. She tied Samson while he slept and called the Philistines. But upon waking, he broke the bowstrings with ease.
"You lied to me, Samson,"
whispered Delilah, feigning sadness. And so she tried again and again. But each time Delilah asked, Samson's answer was a lie. Until one day, she played her final card. With tears in her eyes and a voice full of sorrow, she looked at Samson.
If you really loved me, you would trust me, but you don't.
Her words pierced Samson's heart like no spear ever could. He took a deep breath, and at that moment, the fortress he had built crumbled.
Delilah, if my hair is cut, I will lose my strength.
Delilah waited until he was deeply asleep. Then, with gentle hands but cold intent, she cut each of his braids. When the Philistines stormed into the room that night, Samson tried to react, but something was wrong. His strength had left him. He fought, but it was too late. The Philistines captured him, gouged out his eyes, and took him to Gaza. The hero of Israel, now blind and humiliated, turned the millstone, reduced to a slave. But the story does not end here. While Samson turned the millstone day after day, a new chapter of his life was being written. A chapter of redemption. The Philistines celebrated the fall of Israel's greatest hero. To them, the cycle of terror that Samson had spread among his people had finally come to an end. The leaders toasted their cups in the temples, convinced that the power of Dagon, their god, had surpassed the God of Israel. But what the Philistines didn't realize was that, far from the public eye and in the darkness of captivity, something was happening. Samson's hair began to grow back. Samson, blind and humiliated, found something he had lost in his days of glory: humility. Without sight, he began to see with his heart. With each turn of the millstone, he reflected on the mistakes that had brought him there. Pride and overconfidence had been his downfall. He realized that at some point in his journey, he began to believe that his strength was a result of his own merit and not the power of God. Samson prayed softly as he worked.
Lord, remember me and give me strength one more time.
This prayer was unlike the others. There was no arrogance or desire for revenge, only a broken heart, asking for a chance to fulfill the calling he had been given. And God listened. In Gaza, the temple of Dagon was alive with celebration. Thousands of Philistines had gathered, from leaders and nobles to common folk. They wanted more than just to celebrate. They wanted to humiliate Samson in public. The leaders ordered that he be brought to the festival, to be displayed as a trophy.
Bring out the hero of Israel. Let's have some fun with him.
One of the generals shouted, and the temple erupted in laughter. Samson, guided by a young servant, entered the temple. The crowd hurled objects at him and hurled insults. But at that moment, Samson was at peace. He felt the air vibrate with the ae-bu-gro sound of drums and laughter, but his focus was elsewhere. Samson stretched out his hands, feeling the main pillars that supported the temple. With his fingers, he traced every crack in the ancient stones and whispered silently,
Lord, I ask you to strengthen me one more time.
As the crowd laughed and the leaders toasted, Samson took a deep breath. A strange warmth spread through his body, the same warmth he had felt in his days of victory. He planted his feet firmly on the ground, felt the dust beneath his sandals, and with all the strength he had left, began to push against the pillars. At first, nothing happened. The temple continued to pulse with life and laughter, but slowly, cracks began to appear. The laughter turned to murmurs, and soon after, too, cries of desperation.
The temple is collapsing.
Someone shouted, but it was too late. With one final push, Samson gave everything: his strength, his body, and his soul. The pillars gave way, the roof caved in, and the entire temple collapsed like a sea of stone and dust. The crowd screamed in panic, but there was nowhere to run. That day, more Philistines died beneath the stones of the temple than Samson had killed during his entire lifetime. Samson died there, among his enemies, but not as a defeated man. He died as a hero. Samson's story does not end in the temple's rubble. It continues to echo through generations as a powerful reminder. Our greatest weaknesses often arise in moments of greatest strength. True power does not come from muscles or abilities, but from a genuine connection with God. Even in the darkest moments, there is hope for redemption. Samson was remembered as the deliverer who failed, but who, in his fall, found his way back to the divine purpose. This story is about more than strength or betrayal. It is about the price of pride, the trap of seduction, and the power of repentance. So, what led Delilah to betray Samson? Was it just greed? Or was there something deeper? Whatever the answer may be, one thing is certain. No one, not even Samson, is free from human weaknesses. Did you enjoy this story? Subscribe to the channel for more biblical stories that inspire and transform lives.